Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Black Logic. Today, we're going to go over illegal immigration pertaining to Chicago. And to help me go along with this is no other than Chicago Red, aka P. Ray, who's a strong activist of essentially ousting out illegal immigrants that's been affecting their communities. But let's build a premise before we get inside of this discussion. Let's start with the numbers. Chicago has seen an unprecedented surge of over 50,000 migrants over this year alone. And many of these individuals seek asylum or economic asylum, were bussed in from border states like Texas. But the reality, the city simply wasn't prepared. With shelters full and temperatures dropping, thousands are being left to fend for themselves or streets in the makeshift camps that Brandon Johnson has allowed and has funding that. And the cost, Mayor Brandon Johnson has estimated that the city would need upwards of $300 million in additional funding to manage the crisis. But where does that money come from? With Chicago already struggling under a hefty budget deficit, taxpayers are bracing for yet another financial hit. Federal aid has been limited and frustration is mounting. And let's not forget about the social tensions here. Neighborhoods like South Lawndale and Humboldt Park, already battling economic hardship, are now experiencing community clashes. Longtime residents feel that their voices are being drowned out as the resources as they desperately need, think housing, food banks, even public safety, are diverted to address this illegal immigrant crisis that is dividing a lot of the people. And here to join me is no other than Chicago Red. How you doing, sis? How you doing this evening?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well, thank you.
So tell us about the ongoing crisis as you see it, and tell us some of the things that you're doing to combat this.
Okay, first things first, I want people to know and understand that although Chicago Red is a political organization, we focus on patriotic esteem and civic education. So what we're doing is raising the esteem of the people, because when you have high self-esteem, you love yourself more, and love compels somebody to act. So that's what we're on right now, compelling the people to act. What we're doing is we're reminding the people that it's very expensive to live in this city. It is very hard to exist here. The weather is always extreme. It's always wet. So it's either really cold and wet or really hot and wet. And we just deserve better than this. We are living as the epicenter of the cartel, of the Mexican cartel. They chose the west side of Chicago as their American headquarters. So we need to take that money and reinvest it into mental health and drug rehab treatment. That's what initially took me to City Hall. That's what I told them, you guys took the money from the rehabs and gave it to the illegals, put the money back in the rehab so that we can help our people and rebuild our families and our neighborhoods. So our goal right now is to keep the people well informed about what's going on.
I wonder some of the barriers that you guys are incurring when it comes to the government by the way of Mayor Brandon Johnson, and some of the same things that your previous mayor, Lori, my apologies, Ms. Lightfoot, Lori Lightfoot, has essentially did some of the similarities. Do you see in the similarities of the support of illegal immigration that they have been occurring there?
Yes and no. So one of the reasons that I personally did not support Lori in her bid for re-election is because of her commitment to the illegals. However, Lori, I don't believe, and I'm not a psychic. Do you hear that feedback?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So I don't think that Lori would have necessarily allowed the federal government or Mayor Greg Abbott to bully her into taking so many buses to the city. However, Brandon stated on his campaign website that the migrants, wink, would be a priority for him. And so when I was on the radio and I was reading this to people, I kept telling them, do not support Brandon Johnson. Do not vote for Brandon Johnson. If you vote for Brandon Johnson, you are voting for your money to go to the illegals. Okay, my people? And as I was saying this, because Brandon Johnson and I live in the same neighborhood, we're kind of in the same social circles or whatever, people were telling me that I was jealous of him, that I was being a hater, and all types of things. And I'm like, no, guys, I'm trying to save you. I'm trying to help everybody because this is going to to get very bad. But Brandon thought that he was just going to force this on the people. I don't think that Lori would have done it in that way. We saw that Brandon's approach was very, very, very disrespectful when we saw him trying to take our park over here, Armiston Park, and make it into a shelter for the illegals. 1,000 people from my neighborhood showed up. Okay,
Wow.
yes, it was the wildest community meeting I've ever gone to in my life. The alderman said that he's never been cussed out by 1,000 people at one time in his life, and so they stopped that shelter from coming over here. We were one of the few communities that was very successful in preventing them from coming over to where we are and setting up shop. However, now that the budget has been passed, I need everybody to focus on the services that we need to get. Because this past weekend, there was a terrorist attack in Germany where a guy who lied and said that he was an anti-Islamic refugee coming from Saudi Arabia and he needed to find refuge in Germany. The Saudi government called the Germans and said, no, this man is a farce. He is lying. Send him home now. We have a jail cell waiting on him in Riyadh. He is a bad person. Well, the Germans decided to keep him, and they found out that he was indeed a terrorist. So that's my biggest fear now, because Al Qaeda has stated multiple times over the past 15 years that Chicago will be one of the places that they hit when they start their American terrorism campaign.
Now, I heard that your guys' budget, how much is the budget of Chicago actually in a deficit?
This year, 235 million. Next year, 987 million.
Wow. And it's in most of the issues or the deficit is stemming from illegal immigration?
Correct. So this year, our mayors and city council spent $400 million on the illegal immigrants, and we're 235 million in the red, which means that they overspent us in order to accommodate them. And they don't deserve that. What makes them so special?
Also, now I know Mayor Johnson, he's been doubling down his support for illegal immigration by the way of them being, Chicago being a sanctuary cities. Now, the majority of Chicagoans, is the city normally blue, or is it somewhat in the middle, Green Party, or is it
It's a blue
always
city,
been red?
and that's due to the bullying and intimidation of the Democratic Party.
How so?
So back in the day, when our grandparents first came here from the South, the Democratic machine existed. And the machine stated that if you did not sign up for your local Democratic Party, you could not get any government jobs, you could not join the union, you may not get your trash picked up, and somebody might slap you in the face. The city, oh yeah, this is very serious. And so we ended up with something called the Shackman Decree, Shakman, the Shackman Decree. And that was a federal decree that made it illegal to politically bully people in the city of Chicago. So it was so bad and pervasive that it took an act of Congress to make them stop. However, here comes P-Ray. So I got on the radio, as you know, I had a very popular radio show in the city for a number of years. And I was telling people, no, the emperor doesn't have on any clothes. Start booing them, y'all. We deserve better than this. So by us letting the people know that an option exists and the bullies of the previous machine no longer are with us, now we can move on and make better choices. And here we are.
Now, would you say that the political paradigm in Chicago has shifted more red, or
substantially more red, substantially more red. I believe now.
Is that from the Black constituents there?
Yes, it's definitely from the constituents, because now people are starting to say, wait a minute, I don't want to be a Democrat anymore. You're right. They did bully my parents into this. They did bully my grandparents into this. And therefore, we're not going to allow them to bully us anymore. Brandon, why are you spending our money? The fact, like how you see people going down to City Hall and getting on the microphone or putting out all this content about Chicago. 5 years ago, this was unheard of, but we still were a sanctuary city. 10 years, this was unheard of, but we were still a sanctuary city. However, it took somebody to come out from our community, because I'm from the Austin area. I love the Austin community, and the Austin community loves me. And so because I am so homegrown, I can speak about this very authentically. And now my neighbors, my friends, my family, people out south, people up north, people over east, all of them understand that we're living under the same type of pressure, and now we're moving on.
So there's been a lot of outlash from the Chicagoans there about some of the moves that Brandon Johnson has made. And it seems as though that the constituents, the residents there in Chicago are suffering the most because of illegal immigrants. Has the city taken any steps to alleviate the pressure that the communities are feeling because of illegal immigration?
No, not at all. Not at all. These people are up here and they are off the chain, y'all. Today, they actually just got evicted from a building at 7350 South Phillips, which is on the southeast side, because they were over there going crazy, killing people, raping people, tying folks up, torturing them in apartments. One lady went on vacation for Thanksgiving. And when she came back, it was 2 Venezuelans living in her house with guns. And she had to call the Chicago Police Department to get them out of her home. Another incident that happened last week over here on the west side, a woman said that she started to get some calls. And they said, hey, you need to come to your grandmother's house. It's something crazy happening. When she got there, she said about 8 cars of Venezuelans pulled up. They went inside her grandmother's gate and they were on her porch trying to get into her house. Now, because they had not actually entered the building, they were just trespassing on public property. On private property, rather. The Safety Act has made it now, the Safety Act was a crime reform bill that was passed by the State House, and that has made trespassing a non-arrestable offense. So when the police came, the only thing that they could do was give them citations. So that girl had to call her cousins and all the neighbors and people she grew up from the hood to get these people out of her mother's or her grandmother's gate. And she said it took them 3 hours to do it. So now we are good country people here in Chicago. We're all from Mississippi and Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, straight up I-57. So we have our gates open, right? Because you don't know when one of your neighbors wants to come over. They might be making some cornbread and need some baking powder. So you need to have your gate open so somebody can knock on your window and get a little thing of baking powder. Now we all got to put locks on our gates because the Venezuelans are here. They might try to pitch a tent.
So majority of the illegal immigrants are from Venezuela?
Well, the majority of them are from Venezuela. However, I speak Spanish and French fluently. So I go out and I talk to people. There is a significant West African population here as well, specifically from Senegal, because the way that this is working is that Nicaragua is an open country. If you have $100, you can get a visa to go to Nicaragua. Once you get there, they will align you with a cartel caravan, and depending on how you want to travel, they will it's anywhere between $7,000 to $15,000, and they will traffic you across the American border. So we have everybody here, which is terrifying for me because we're literally in the middle of World War III, and these people are coming to us to get their licks back.
Did I hear right that I believe yourself is trying to reach out to the incoming border czar, Tom Homan, to assist him in, again, getting rid of all these illegal immigrants? Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, sir. So he came here to Chicago. We gifted him with one of our Chicago red hats. We gave him a hard hat version of this hat because we told him, we know that you're going down to that border and we want to protect your head. When you get here, because our mayor has stated that he's not going to assist, we have enough intel from the streets that we will assist you in doing the job. Because again, my friends, this is not about the Venezuelans. This is not about us being against Hispanic people. This is about the safety and security of the citizens of the city of Chicago. When these people arrive here, they're coming with fentanyl in their pockets because the cartel brought them here. So what that looks like on our end is overdosing. The children right now are hooked on these pills and they are overdosing in the Chicago public schools. This is a serious matter. We saw the woman get set on fire yesterday on the train. Now, what really made me upset about that, and I'm not just rambling, but Brandon Johnson, this mayor that you have on the screen, he and the Chicago Public Schools decided that the Chicago Public Schools were out of the business of busing the children. So what they did was they took the money allocated for pupil transportation and they subsidized the Chicago Transit Authority by saying that just give all the kids bus cards. What can a kindergartner do with the bus card? But now we have illegals setting people on fire on the trains. So why would we put our children on the trains? Again, this is like affecting us on every
Wait a minute,
level.
that was in Chicago? I thought that was in New York.
So that was in New York, but I'm saying
Okay.
something similar could happen in Chicago because we are not putting our children on school buses because that money has gone to the illegals in terms of busing unhoused people. And the unhoused people are the illegals. So now the illegals get the school buses, but the American children get bus cards and the risk of being set on fire on the train. It's crazy.
I want you to listen in on this. I want your reaction with this.
The Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is now threatening to arrest ICE agents if they attempt to deport illegal migrants.
I'm just saying, I'm offering to the people of Chicago, I'm going to stand up and protect the people of this city against every threat from this administration. And I hope the rest of the people in this room in the city of Chicago takes this threat as seriously as I do. Undermining public accommodations, going after undocumented people, it's a threat to our civility and to our democracy.
The Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is now claiming that he will arrest and prevent ICE agents if they attempt to deport illegal migrants from the city of Chicago. The mayor claims that they are citizens and that he will do anything to protect them. The Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is now threatening.
So what is your thoughts on that?
I think I was trying to, do you still hear that echo?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think that one, Brandon Johnson should have that same passion towards the voters and their families who put him in office. None of those illegals have the ability to vote, so they are not his priority. Number two, I hope that Tom Homan comes to the city of Chicago and makes an example of Brandon so that everybody else can get in line. He is out of line constitutionally because the exclusivity clause of the first section of the U.S. Constitution states any level of government that exclusively deals with an issue has superiority over everybody else. And immigration is dealt with by the federal government. So he's the one that's going to be arrested. If he tries to impede this federal operation in any way, he's going to the Metropolitan Correctional Center downtown, which is a federal jail. And I'm okay with that because those people did not vote him into office. Where we're broadcasting from right now is Brandon Johnson's former campaign headquarters. So again, if you don't care enough about the people over here who literally put you in that office, we don't care about what the federal government is going to get ready to do to him.
Now, some of the residents there, are any of the residents there in those communities that being affected the most are in the support of the mayor versus against the mayor?
No. Everybody is sick of these people because what you have to understand is when you have an influx.
I mean, even those who voted for the Democrats?
Especially those who voted for him. Everybody feels ashamed. Okay, so again, we're in the same neighborhood. Let me give you a little background on our neighborhood. We are America's largest American Negro community. There are 85,000 American Negroes in this neighborhood, not town. We just one neighborhood on the west side of Chicago. Again, all of us from down south, super country, barbecue, porches, dance contests, church, all that good stuff. And so with him, I knew it was going to be a farce, but they were very proud to support this man and have him here. Again, this is his campaign headquarters. Now, everybody said that they're ashamed, that they feel tricked, that they feel betrayed, that they feel like he's ignoring them, that he's not listening to them, he's not taking their phone calls. And I'm like, y'all, this was on the website. Why is anybody surprised? Why is anybody upset? It was literally listed. He said he was going to put them first. But now everyone sees that we're looking at a big old ashy booty. The emperor has on no clothes. And now everybody's upset. But the city of Chicago does not have a recall mechanism. And that's what I told people as of today. I don't want to fight Brandon no more. There's no reason to fight Brandon. We can't get rid of him. We can't force him to do anything. And you can't bully Chicago people. So just like we won't be bullied, Brandon won't be bullied either. So we have to figure out how to shake a hand and make a friend so that we can get the things accomplished that we want to get accomplished. And again, for me, that's drug rehab treatments.
Now, you say you can't bully him. There's really nothing you can do. What about going over his head to the governor?
So the governor's on board with this too. J.B. Pritzker, he at first was talking that mess too. You gonna have to come through me. And then Tom Homan was like, we're gonna arrest you then. And then he's like, well, wait a minute now, hold up. hey now, bud, maybe we can just get rid of those criminals. But yeah, we'll see how this goes because he doesn't want to go to jail. But Brandon believes that he's the same as JB Pritzker. JB Pritzker is a rich, redacted man. I don't talk about them people. That's why I say the redacted. He's a rich, redacted man. Okay. He's the 7th richest family in America. So he's not going to go to the Metropolitan Correctional Center. But Brandon Johnson from Elgin, Illinois definitely will. So I believe that what they're going to do is JB is going to walk with Brandon to that line. And when it's time to fight, JB is going to take 3 steps back and let Brandon catch all of those arrows to the face.
Now, doesn't the governor have the authority or power to unseat the mayor?
No.
Not at all, because again, this is coming through federal pathways. When Tom Homey comes into town, I know that the residents of Chicago will receive him welcomely, and if he's not abiding by what the federal government, essentially known as illegal immigrants, doesn't the governor have some sort of authority? Like you're not abiding by the law, so I'm gonna have to unseat you. There's no procedures.
No, there's no mechanism to remove a sitting officer in the state of Illinois. Not for governor. Well, yeah, you can recall the governor. I take that back. They passed something to recall the governor because of Rob Blagojevich, who was our deposed governor. We love Rob Blagojevich. However, I digress. But other than that, you can't get rid of the mayor. You can't get rid of commissioners. You can't get rid of aldermen. You just got to stick with your decision for 4 years. And what I've seen based on how hard we fought against this budget and the way that it came out, we can't force them to do anything. You gotta go and do it more diplomatically. So for me, I'm not gonna go down there like I've never talked about him. I've never called him out his name. I don't talk about his health. I love his wife. I love First Lady Stacey Johnson. I knew her years ago before he ever came into the mix because again, we're in the same neighborhood. So I'm not here to mess up those neighborly ties because I might run into Brandon and Stacey and I might need them to push me out the snow one day, right? So I don't want to get into it with my neighbors. But what I want to help them understand is why we are adamantly against the actions that he's doing and how it's negatively impacting the neighborhood because he's getting his marching orders from people outside of our community and they're trying to impose it on us and we don't want it.
I know Mayor Johnson has called out for federal support. How's that being received? I know that the current administration, Democratic, do they still have the funding to even extend that amount, just knowing that the government is about to shut down? Do you know any positive feedback of money pouring into Chicago to support?
Jim Crow Joe said he wasn't giving us any money. He already told him, I have no more money for you. And yeah, so we're definitely not getting any money from the feds. JB Pritzker has not been forthcoming with money coming to the city of Chicago. So literally, Brandon is standing out here all by himself, digging in our pockets to pay for people that we don't want here. We literally, nobody asked them to come here. It's not like Chicago had an employment shortage because we have the highest Black male unemployment rate in the country. It's not like we were saying, hey, we
what now? Now you said it has the highest number of unemployment for Black men, correct?
Yes.
What is the major causes behind that?
It's a plethora of things. Okay. One, if you are a low-skilled worker, the majority of those jobs are now being taken by people who are here illegally and being paid under the table. But that was an issue long before the first bus arrived because we've been a sanctuary city since 1985. So that has been a pervasive issue. Two, you have a lot of people who have felonies. And so they believe, okay, I have a felony, I can't even go and do this. Like a lot of people think, oh, I got a felony, I can't vote. I'm like, this is Illinois, you can vote. So we got to do a lot of education about the rights and resources and privileges that felons have as Americans, even though they've been incarcerated. And then three, it's too easy. I was just talking to an older gentleman last week, and he said it used to be, if a man don't work, a man don't eat. Now, if a man don't work, he gets a link card. A link card is our food stamp cards up here, Illinois Link. So now you don't even have to work to get a job. Nobody's gonna call you trifling. Nobody's gonna shame you for going to get your stamps. Nobody's gonna shame you for buying your steak burgers with your link card. So we gotta like make work function again and make work attractive again. But I think that when Trump gets in office, there's gonna be a huge push for able-bodied Americans to start working again, and we're gonna see that people are gonna have to start working again because the stamps are getting cut off.
Do you believe that he has somehow turned Chicago into a socialist city?
Yes. Well, that was the goal all along. They are socialists. Lori Lightfoot was in a way a socialist as well, but they've taken it way to the left. And with that, we are capitalists in the city. Everybody in America knows Chicago is a city of hustlers. We want to work and get what we want on our 10 toes with our 10 fingers. We don't want anybody to give us anything. Stop telling us that we're pitiful. Stop telling us that we're charity. Stop telling us that, we have to have this $500 universal income program to help people get through. $500, it pays nobody's rent. What are you doing here other than perpetuating the notion that people are pitiful? We're not. So that's another thing that my movement is really big on. Again, self-esteem. Stop letting these people feed and starve you when you are able to take care of yourselves. When our grandparents came up here from those cotton fields, they had nothing. Nothing. If anybody had low, broken esteem, it was them. But they were able to come up here to the city of Chicago and work as Americans because we were not a sanctuary city at that time. So I think once we get these people out, because a lot of people say as well that they hate working in the factories because the Hispanics are very Negrophobic, and they get into it with these Hispanics. Oh yeah. Oh, well, we know. We don't even gotta get into it.
We know there's no black-brown
Hispanics
alliance.
are very
We know.
Negrophobic, so then that makes it difficult on these factory lines as well.
I also wanted to talk about they've been renovating a lot of the vacant schools, high schools, middle schools there to house illegal migrants. How many schools to date do you believe that's been converted into migrant shelters?
I believe, as far as I know, 3. But it's very important that we realize why the schools closed. So a lot of people make a big deal. Oh, they closed 50 schools. This is so terrible. Yes, they had to close the schools. P-Ray don't care that they closed the schools. P-Ray, why don't you care? Because they demolished the housing stock. They demolished the multi-family housing stock all throughout the city when Rahm Emanuel was in office. So, like, for instance, if I live in a 2-flat, that's what my grandparents bought for us. So we have an apartment on the second floor that has 3 bedrooms, an apartment on the first floor that has 2 bedrooms, and then you have the basement unit, like the garden unit. You have 1 or 2 rooms down there. Let's say on average, like in our building coming up, there were 4 kids in the building. My grandmother's 3 children, and then she had a tenant with a child. So 4 kids per building. If you tear down 7 buildings, that's 28 kids. That's a whole classroom. And they tore down blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of this housing. So now we have empty schools. Now the issue is not so much that they converted these empty schools into shelters. It's the people that they created the shelters for, because Chicago has always had a large homelessness issue because the Chicago Housing Authority demolished 95% of the housing stock, displacing over 100,000 people, and then hoarded all the federal money that they got to rebuild it. At this very moment, the Chicago Housing Authority has $1,800,000,000. But that money can only be spent on citizens because that's federal housing, and Chicago is not in the business of housing Americans. So they want to tax us and come up with all these little funky funding resources to create funding mechanisms that don't have those federal requirements on it, meaning that you don't need a social security number to spend the money on them. That's what we're fighting for. It's always been housing, friends. My fight in this has always been housing. Any problem that you see in the city of Chicago starts and ends with housing, and the Chicago Housing Authority hoarding all that money.
This is interesting because everybody seems as though they're going against Brandon Johnson. What is Brandon Johnson is getting out of this? Because his political career is going to be over after this. And I know you guys are going to make sure of that. So what is he getting out of this? Why does he continue down this path? And is very detrimental to his political career.
Well, I'm gonna give you some homework. The Chicago Teachers Union has been going to Venezuela for the past 12 years. Why is a municipal union, a municipal educational union going down to Venezuela making deals with the Venezuelan government? Because they were down there passing out maps. This is my opinion. They were passing out maps. They were making promises to these people.
Passing out maps to where?
To come to Chicago and suck up my tax dollars. Because again, why is CTU going to Venezuela? Why? Venezuela was a failed state when they first started going there. This is a socialist.
And I don't believe we're allies with Venezuela.
No,
I don't believe we're allies.
No, I have actually heavily sanctioned them. So I don't understand how or why we are building up all of this relationship through the Chicago Teachers Union with the Venezuelan government. It's also important to remember that Brandon is a high-level member of the CTU who is currently on leave. He still works for the union, okay? He works for them. He's just on leave. However, when the Chicago Teachers Union went on strike in 2017, 2018, somewhere in that space when Lori was in office. I took the time and I read their contracts because I'm like, why are they going on strike? You want to know what was in the contract, friend?
Please.
They were striking so that undocumented people could work in the Chicago public schools, and they want each school to have a $600 million fund allocated to people who get into immigration problems. They went on strike and had American children sitting at home to secure jobs for illegals because they knew that these Venezuelans were coming because they already made the deal. It's all documented. I'm not making this up. This is not a secret. This is well documented for anybody who wants to research it to research it. This is the Chicago Teachers Union and all of their, of their promises. Now, that's what Brandon is aligned to. And when Brandon first got in office, he and the union put out a statement called "First Things First, Operation Get the Money." So that's what they're doing. They're getting the money. This is what they came to do, to scoop up all of these tax dollars to fulfill their socialist wishes.
Now, when you met Tom Homan, the incoming board czar, did he hint at any potential promises or made any promise or essentially straight out said what he's planning to do? Did you guys get any hint of any of those things?
He said that he's coming. He said that we're coming up here. Chicago is first. We are bringing the people to the city of Chicago. Just know that this is how we're going to work, and we got your back. What I told Mr. Tom Homan, as I was gifting him our little hats, is that if they try to call you a racist or a xenophobe or anything, come get us. Come get us, and we will stand right next to you as American Negro people planted in this country to let them know this is not a racist move. This is a nationalist move. And as American people, as non-immigrant people in this country, the American Negroes in Chicago stand with you. And that's why everywhere he goes now, he's like, man, my friends in Chicago, because we're serious about it. He was even on Fox News last week with the vice president of Chicago Red, Bashan Tuckle, who also had on a hat like this. And Bashan was telling him, help us, man, this place sucks. It sucks here. It literally sucks. Because we are so busy investing so much of our money and time into people that we never sent for. We have Americans who are right now sleeping on a cold, wet ground while these people are sleeping in hotels. That's not okay, y'all.
Now, I've been saying that for a long time. We have over 1 million Americans, around the country living on the street, but yet we have people who are from another entire country who, again, quote unquote, who is claiming asylum, where we know that none of them, or maybe a very small portion of them, is seeking, prosecution from their homeland, or political prosecution, that they seek refugee here. We know that this is mostly economic asylum. But let me ask you this. I did hear that it was closing a lot of the migrant shelters. Have you heard about that as well?
Let's talk about the shelters being closed, because people are like, oh, they're closing the shelters. Where are they going? Outside, in our yards, in our backyards, in our garages. So Brandon,
what is the solution?
Right, there was no solution. So I'll give you the plan. Yes, there was, in a way. Initially, there was a system of shelters for Americans, and then there was a system of shelters for the new arrivals. The new arrivals always had more beds in their new arrival level than we had for the Americans.
Right.
Brandon said that he was going to get rid of this two-pronged system and combine both systems for the Americans and the illegals.
No, that can't work. That won't work.
Well, voila. But see, the thing is, they're just going to usurp the beds for the Americans and give more to the illegals because the buses
Right.
are still coming. You see what I'm saying? But what
Right.
also happens is this. The people who qualify for the shelters now are only the women and the children, which means all the men are on the street right now. And we're literally sitting ducks. I'll send you the video of these people coming out of this woman's yard. It looked like Thriller. It was like 30 of them wrapped in these blankets, walking in the street because they have nowhere to go. It's cold in Chicago. They've never felt cold. They've never seen the snow and the ice. So now the purge is about to begin.
I do want to share this video with the audience because I think it speaks to the migrant crisis as well as them now closing shelters and how is it affecting you guys. So I'm gonna get your reaction to this as well.
Adjustments to its shelter system for Chicago is making adjustments to its shelter system for new arrivals.
The city, along with the state of Illinois and Cook County, have a strategic plan in place for 2024 to ensure that everybody who needs a bed has one. Tia Ewing is standing by with the details. Tia.
Well, Scott and Dawn, the migrant shelters will close up in October, and the city says this comes at a time when they already have about 5,000 beds that are going unused. What you are looking at in front of the lens, people in survival mode. Behind the lens, a migrant mother from Venezuela describing limited food resources inside the shelter in the 2200 block of Halsted Street. It's now one of 3 shelters slated to close. At one point this year, Chicago was caring for more than 12,000 migrants spanning across 24 shelters.
We have continued busing migrants to sanctuary cities across the entire country. And those buses will continue to roll until we finally secure our border.
That's Texas Governor.
Now, what I wanted to know, especially with the move that, our governor made to bus those migrants to Chicago. What are your thoughts on that before we get into the shelters again?
Thank you, Greg Abbott. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Greg Abbott. Because if Greg Abbott didn't send those buses, oh my God, we would still be getting tricked with this sanctuary city mess. Remember, we were already dealing with the fallout and chaos of this long before the first bus arrived. But it's also very important to remember that it's not just Greg Abbott sending these buses. The Democratic governor of Arizona is sending people to Chicago. The Democratic mayor of Denver, Colorado is sending people to Chicago. The Democratic Mayor Eric Adams of New York City is sending people to Chicago.
Why haven't we heard about this on national
yes,
news?
Sir. Yes, sir. It's not just Greg Abbott. Everybody is sending their trash to us, and we don't want it. We're closed, guys. We are at capacity. So, yes, if they did not start sending these people here and making people uncomfortable, we wouldn't have been able to start having these very uncomfortable conversations.
That is absolutely, I haven't heard about Arizona as well as Denver, especially New York, that they was actually busing people and shipping them to Chicago now.
Yes. Yep.
And Brandon Johnson is just accepting them as they come?
He invited them here, love. He told them, come on to Chicago. Anybody that feels uncomfortable and you don't think that you're going to get protection, come to Chicago and we're going to protect you. And we're saying, oh, no, we won't. We calling ICE, 866-DHS-2-ICE. Don't let us catch you outside because you're getting on the ICE truck and getting out of here. We can't afford you anymore.
Now, lastly, let's go over the crime. Has crime risen because of illegal immigration? And I know you were saying that because they're closed some of these migrant shelters, illegal immigrant shelters, that a lot of the immigrants are ending up on people's lawns in their backyards, etc. Has that caused any, heightened violence or activity that wasn't there prior to them getting there?
Yes and no. So Chicago's always been a wild place.
Right.
So aside from them, and us wanting to get this immigration move corrected, we also need a crime bill in the city of Chicago, okay? Because some people, we got to make crime illegal again in Cook County. However, yes, they more crime. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, we can
They
hear you.
are bringing more crime. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, people. I put my phone on do not disturb, and people call twice anyway. However, yes, they are committing crimes as well. They have guns. They're selling drugs. They're carjacking people. They're raping women in broad daylight on sidewalks. Yes, yes, this is happening to us. They raped a 4-year-old girl at Rainbow Beach 2 summers ago. This is not a game, you guys, because they don't have the same type of morality that we have. So yes, they're bringing their own type of crime here. For instance, they said that there was a 14-year-old boy who had robbed like 2 Walgreens with a machete. And I'm like, a machete? We know that those not the soldiers of Chirac, because those boys carry guns. We know who went and robbed somebody with a machete. So these are the types of things that we're dealing with because, again, they are very desperate. And if you are willing to work with the cartel to traffic you into the United States of America, then that makes you an inherent criminal. You didn't stop at the embassy. When you want to come to the United States of America, your job is to stop at the closest embassy to your home country or consulate and apply for asylum or refugee status there. They chose to circumvent all of that and engage in an international criminal organization to traffic them to our city. So all of them are criminals. And I really get frustrated when people are saying all of them are not bad. Oh no, their first act in the United States of America was a criminal action.
Absolutely.
And therefore they must be treated like criminals.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree to that sentiment because I say the same thing. You're already in the country legally, so you've already been trespassed into another country that you normally did that. And I will say, when it comes to the gang violence, you have I'm just going to say Central American gangs that are there. Are they clashing with some of the black entourages, the black groups there in Chicago? And is that like stemming out to like this broad out gang violence?
Well, so what happened is on the west side, no. Okay, on the west side of Chicago, again, we're very, very country people. Now, the guys are into it, but they've been into it since their granddaddies were into it. Okay, that's a very personal beef. Stay out of our business. On the south side, one gang has actually commandeered the Venezuelans and made them a branch of their gang, and now they're weaponizing them against the other gang. Who does that? Them. So yes, that's what's happening right now on the south side of Chicago on 60 near like 61st and King Drive. That's exactly what's happening over there. But over there, like I said, they're off the chain over there. They just found somebody tied up and tortured in one of those buildings. And then one man killed another man, and then another man came back and killed him. But the first man who got killed, they threw him in a dumpster out the window. But in that complex, it's American Negro people and the Venezuelans. So sometimes they'll come and like take over the whole unit or this whole complex. And then we call the police and say, hey, there are like 30 Venezuelans out here with guns and motorcycles. Please come help. The news will say, oh, they're just lying. That's just fake news. That didn't happen. Yes, this is happening in real time.
Well, let me ask you this in closing. If you had the keys to the city and you can make any decision about illegal immigration, city budget, shelters, school vacancy, what would be your plan? And I know this is off the top. I know that you're not prepared for this, but just kind of give me an idea of how you would handle some of the systemic issues that's stemming from illegal immigrants being in Chicago.
The first thing I would do is eliminate the sanctuary ordinance. By eliminating the sanctuary ordinance, it will allow the Chicago Police Department to work in tandem with the Immigration Custom and Enforcement Service to get these people out of here. It would also demagnetize our city from being a illegal alien magnet. People will know that you can no longer sneak into the United States of America and be taken care of in the city of Chicago. The second thing I would do is begin to spend the $1,800,000,000 that the Chicago Housing Authority has, because that's when all the chaos really started in Chicago in the early 2000s when they demolished the Chicago housing projects. Like you watch Good Times, how they lived in the Cabrini Green, that no longer exists. That's actually now like a gentrified Buffy area. But they still have projects over there now. So the people who were there, the original inhabitants, are now clashing with these Buffies. So yes, we must spend the CHA money because there are swaths and swaths and swaths of vacant land all around the city, and we can build a ton of housing with $1.8 billion. What I would then do after you rebuild the housing, then you reopen the school because now we have children again, right? Now we have people who are going to occupy the schools. We rebuild the communities. But the crux of all of our problems in the city, again, starts with housing. And what people have to remember, I'm like, this lady that I follow on Facebook just made a post. She said, the city paid me $5,000 to put the illegals in my house, and I put them here. Well, now I got to sell my house because after that $5,000 ran out, they were supposed to get a job and pay me, but they did not pay me, and now I'm way behind in my mortgage. And because they didn't have social security numbers, the city told me to put the utilities in my name, but now the money ran out, and now the utilities are being ran up. And now when Trump gets in office, I'm going to be the first one to tell them where they're at because they got to get out of my house, right? So we know that even women like her who decided to rent to them, she did it because the money that the city gave to the illegals was higher than market rate rent. So if you're a landlord and your property taxes are going up because of the illegals, now you got to pay your taxes. And I'm dealing with Kiki and her 3 kids and her sometime baby daddy. And, you know, they're kicking in the walls, and I got to come and knock on the door on the 6th, the 7th, the 8th for my money. Well, I'm just going to take Maria and Jose. They got $5,000 right now. Come on, Kiki, y'all get up out of here so we can let Maria and Jose come in. So their presence has added to the homelessness situation of Americans in the city because they are pulling on our very scarce housing.
And they're not even using money they earned. They just been giving the money. Yes. I understand.
Yeah, so that's my main issue. If I was in charge, I would focus on, again, getting rid of the sanctuary city issue to alleviate the housing pressure. Then I would spend the housing money to build more housing to alleviate the housing pressure that will attract our people back to Chicago, because you down south, I'm sure it's a whole bunch of Chicago people where you at, because Chicago people have to flee because we don't have anywhere to stay. But they're sitting on the money. So that's what has to happen. The money in the Chicago Housing Authority's budget must be spent. I don't understand how a city agency could hoard $1,800,000,000 of federal housing funds just because they want to. But they're only doing that to drive us out of the city.
Well, Chicago Red, I just wish that the situation in Chicago becomes a lot better. Hopefully Donald Trump, by the way of Tom Homan, will make sure that it happens. And again, I only wish the best for, the natural born Chicagoans, the Americans there that are suffering from this illegal immigrant crisis. Is there any last remarks, comments you want to shout out your social media so people know where to find you and follow you and support you in this fight?
Yes, you can support the organization at chicagored.org. That's what makes everything happen. Nobody has funded us or anything. We're doing all of this with a bullhorn and some courage. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you can follow me on Twitter. That's where I do all of my fun stuff. I love Twitter. Love Twitter. So that's at Chicago Red P. And then you can also follow my podcast at Black Excellence Hour on Facebook, and that broadcasts Sundays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. The Black Excellence Hour is what got all of this going. I was on the radio calling Donald Trump my Donnie, okay? And they was like, yo, Donnie, I'm like, my Donnie, let me tell y'all about my Donnie. And it's working because now he's everybody's Donnie. We got Tom Homan here. I told him, when you get here, Tom Homan, you see those girls twerking on the police cars, we gonna have the twerkers for the tanks, okay? Call the twerkers, bring them out. We need everybody. You in the ticker tape parade because the city of Chicago needs this. We must have this or we shall perish. So I'll leave you with this. Please pray for the good people of Chicago. Know that we do not want this chaos. We do not support the perversion and the just dysfunctionality of the Democratic Party. And keep us in your prayers, y'all. And remember that courage is contagious. So as we are making these moves in our different towns, cities, and wherever you are in the world, be courageous. Stand up and say what needs to be said. Nothing will happen to you. If somebody says that they don't want to be your friend, there are 8 billion people on the planet, and you can go meet new people. God bless America.
Thank you so much, P. Ray. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And again, Please rewind it so you can see how to support Chicago in this very trying time. And I thank you all once again. This is Black Logic.